So, greetings, world. To deep dive situation update, kind of just two guys talking to each other about what's going on in the world. So, I'm with the UK supervisor, James Morrison. Hi, James. How are you today?
Hi, Jane. I'm great. Thank you. How are yourself?
Oh, yeah, tired. Well, not so tired. I actually got some decent sleep, a little stingy in the morning. I did my regular Magellan's direct stuff, so that'll should get better soon. So, all right. So, what would you like to know, James? I can help
Well,
learn if I do know it.
I'm sure there's anything that I can ask Jane. I'm sure you'll be able to give me the answers. So, um, all what I thought I'd just do, Jane. I just thought what I'd do. I just wanted to kind of get a summary, or well, that's what I thought to try and do anyway, of where we are and what we've been doing, and since you kind of started out and things like that, and since we all met, and because I think a lot of time now, I know what you're doing now. You're doing very specific decodes now on things and breaking things down, which is brilliant for obviously anyone listening in. And I just wanted to kind of get an overview of, as I say, how it all started and where we are now, and then kind of work on that. And then ideally, if we get something out of there, that if we do another one, then I'd like to then maybe just pinpoint certain areas, if that's okay by you.
Sure. So, wow, that's a big call.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
we all started, we were on the planet Urantia, and everything was fine and dandy. They came and blew it up, and then we moved again, and they blew that up, and we moved again, and they blew that up. So here we are. So now that we're on Earth, and they fell to Earth in Ukraine, in Bakhmut, and the Pontic Steppes in the Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine, pretty much the Hungary area. So at that point, then they started trying to enslave everything on Earth and own everything there is. So in the process of that, the reptilian group joined them, the Shakar and the Orion Syndicate, and all of that, which they had previously enslaved the Anunnaki, which is on three of the planets of the brown dwarf that orbits one of two solar systems that orbit this one. There's Nemesis with its seven planets, three which cut into our solar system over 12,920 years, which is Helion, Argoda, and Nibiru. Most people know Nibiru or Nibiru, or however you pronounce it, that comes in at an 86-degree negative angle to the ecliptic of this solar system, comes up, passes behind the Earth, goes behind the sun, comes up, passes between the Earth and the sun, and then leaves our system. And that happened in 2012 through
wow,
4 years through 2016. And they, every time they passed through, come to get gold for their planet. They were enslaved through nuclear war, the kings of the Anunnaki on that system in those three outer planets. Nibiru is their home planet, Helion and Argoda also they inhabit. So to reseed their atmosphere, they need gold, and Earth has tremendous amounts of it. So they come to mine gold. And the very first time they decided they didn't want to mine it, they would take the humans here and force us to mine it, which didn't work out. So humans rebelled. It resulted in what were called the Pyramid Wars that devastated much of the earth, the Sahara, the Gobi, the and some of the deserts, most of the deserts of the world were formed through nuclear war that caused it to rain sand for 1,000 years. They're actually antimatter bombs. The electric wars, they use nuclear bombs. So now at that point, they decided to create miners. So they created a species called mankind, where they used they created a hybrid, a chimera of human, Draco, Anunnaki, Cro-Magnon, and Neanderthal. And they put the desire for gold in the blood. And so that then became the bloodlines of Cain, which then became those that wanted to run the world. Their desire for power and gold is limitless, as engineered into them. And so the problem is they're oversold because all of the species they use are oversold, except for the Alpha Draco. And so in that, they decided that they should rule the entire Earth. And so they began that process, and they quickly, humans at that time were 12 genetic strands, followed from 64 to 12. So they had decided that the only way to enslave humans would be to dumb them down, and to decrease their genetics down. So they got humans down to 2 strands through a process of getting humans to intermarry with the bloodlines of Cain, and also to put all kinds of toxins in the air and toxins in the water and toxins in the food and genetically hybrid things, and create soul traps to put people. That's the big one. They put soul traps up to enslave people, so that when they go into the soul trap and they're caught, first they had just local ones, and they put up the big one with the rings of Saturn and the 3 moons and this moon here, and used part of the inner drive system that was used to bring it here and put it in a tidal lock to lock souls as they'd leave and send them into the rings of Saturn. And then they'd be inside Saturn, mostly one of 3 cities, they holographic cities. The primary one is Jabalon, where it's mostly where all the Christians go. And you're met with holograms when you come in that look like Christ or different people or your family, etc. There's a Muslim one, and there's a Jewish one, and other ones too. But what I've recently learned is that in those, people are given past lives. They're given fictional lives in which they think they're on Earth living an entire life, and they're shown what a screw up they are, that they're totally pathetic, and that people they love, other souls that they love dearly, have betrayed them. They get them to betray them and do all this. It's all holographically done. And this puts misery and torture, and it also puts memories at the unconscious level into the genetics itself that is into the soul genetic print, so that when the body of the soul goes into a physical, corporeal 3D body, the body will pick up that information. The genetics, physical 3D genetics, will pick up that information, so that when they meet that soul again, they will have issues with that soul. They'll have memories that you betrayed me. They may not be conscious, but they're unconscious memories. You betrayed me. You don't stand with me. You don't, all these things that cause problems that we have in every single life. It causes wars too. So they have these warp codes, and they have these, you don't stand, you don't really love me, you're not really there for me, you did this to me before, this horrific, terrible stuff. So we have these recognitions that we meet, and then we have all these limiting behavior patterns. So at a certain point, the Earth realized that she realized that humans aren't going to be able to get past this without some help. So she asked God, the creator of all things, to help. And he sent his only begotten son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, so that we could forgive ourselves and others and lay all that down. Because a lot of what, we feel we let our partner down too. Or our partners are those we love. So, we feel that we did this and we did that, and it causes us to do it again. You get caught in these loops. It's for us to forgive ourselves primarily. The gift of Christ is to forgive ourselves and forgive others, of course, for the sins that we think we committed. If you think it is so for you, you may or may not have actually really committed them. It turns out, I just recently learned this, that a lot of people didn't really commit them down here in this 3D down here. They committed them in a soul trap where they were manipulated into committing them too. So it wasn't actually through pure intent. They were manipulated, and all of this creates the situation that we now have here. And so what they are doing, they know all this. The cabal, the 13 bloodlines, the groups that run them from above, the black, bloodlines, the gray and the white of the 3 popes and the Orsini's are running that at the gray pope level. They're the upper of the 13 families, there's the lower, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, which are all Rothschilds, are illegitimate Rothschilds or regular Rothschilds, and they are the lower houses. You have the upper houses, and then those report to a supreme being of a corporeal sense, which they call a human-like, mankind-like being that is deemed as Lord Maker, that then report to the negative alien groups, which on top are, of course, the Alpha Draco on this earth, primarily. Not absolutely, but primarily. And the queen right now that's running the show is in Israel, in a huge termite mound of tunnels under Israel. And so she's actually, they're very AI enhanced. They're full of nanotech, and she's connected to her mom, who's Enlil. That's Nana Enlil on Earth. And she's connected to Enlil, who is Inky's sister and wife, and those are known as, Inky and Enlil are Isis and Set, or many names. So this all ties into what's going on in France. Paris, which is par Isis or for Isis. The Church of Notre Dame was built on the Temple of Isis to bring forth Inky out of the trap they put him in because he was so evil. And that, of course, failed because they sprung the opening too soon. They burned it down a few days too soon. So he got caught. It started to open, but not all the way. It slammed shut. And so he was destroyed. So his son, actually, Marduk, is who's ruling in this system now. And most people think it's still him, even on the Cabal level. They think it's still him, although they really don't care. So mankind is kind of like man, and human is a ray broken down from what we originally used to be. Human isn't even what we used to be. It turns out, I've recently learned that too, is that we weren't human. We were beings not broken into a fraction of what we are, down to 2 strands. We were having 64 strands of 64 colors of the pure white light of the Holy Spirit. We were literally created from the Word of God and the light of the Holy Spirit into divine beings that were eternal, that never grew old and never aged, never got sick, were absolutely in service to God, and didn't make all the things we do now. We are created to be the guardians of the stargates for the entire universe. And so in that job, each of the carriers in the genetics is a key to the gate system, and they want to rule all of the universe. So they need those. It turns out, to use a stargate, you have to have a key, and the key is the human genetics. So the term of what humans used to be, I don't even know what it is. The best I can do is say Urantia, or the priest of Or, as Ashiana Dean says, the priestess priesthood of Or. And even priestess priesthood, I have to use 2 words. So there's a word that means the entire thing, maybe Melchizedek or something, but that doesn't ring for me. There's something that we don't know anymore that's the term. And so it's the divinity of humans as we were originally created by God. And so that's where we're going back to. I also recently learned, and doing the decode for Admiral Byrd that I submitted, and getting ready to, as soon as it comes back, and do the final editing, get that into deep dives this month, that as the ascension, the Great Awakening, which is, of course, a function of going through the photon belts every half revolution of the Milky Way, it creates a situation in which the sun of your solar system energy is compressed to the core, so that corona goes into the core, and then after you come out, it bursts off and causes a full coronal mass emission that hits the planets, and causes, as it's in the core of the sun, it's vibrating harder and harder, and it's jumping octave. And so each time you jump an octave. This time we're going to jump 2 octaves, because the sun has already gone to that. It's already gone through to 5D and 4D. So this ascension, humans will go from 3D to 4D and on, even to 5D immediately. Some will go through from 3D to 5D is 4D ascension will go away. If those after we pass through on the other half side of the Milky Way with the, this time on the Milky Way, this half, they call this the dream time, the natives to Australia. So when we go through to the other side, humans won't have to go through all that emotional stuff on the astral plane, 4D, fourth density. They will go from third density, do all of the 3D, 4D stuff here at third density and get the lessons learned here. And actually humans have been doing that, even 5D lessons, because of the Draco. Fifth density negatives here messing with us using fifth density tools like the soul trap on us, so that we're learning to deal with things that are way beyond our, it's like you're in third grade and you're dealing with sixth grade stuff. We're learning stuff 4D, 5D, 6D. So a lot of humans may go to 6D or even to 7 or on in this ascension. In one swoop, they will jump and swoop up all the way to 5D and beyond. And so kind of like to infinity and beyond. Toy Story comes to mind. It popped in my head. To infinity and beyond. So.
To infinity and beyond. Can. Whoa! Oh, wow, you flew magnificent.
Now what we're dealing with is the wrap up on dealing with the mess that they made down here, which is the soul trap. The moon room part of it is shut down. The rings are still there. The moons are still there, but it's the moon here isn't operational. But around the Earth to catch them to get into the moon room, Thoth put up what's called the Thosphere, which ensnares them. It's a grid pattern. And the Soul Trap Decode will be getting up this month also, goes into all of this. So what is actually being cleaned up in Ukraine is this vast network of creatures and beings and the old stuff. So the Cabal is getting rid of, and the Alliance is getting rid of all their old armaments, all their old technologies by throwing it into the cauldrons in like Bakhmut and Avdiivka and all of this conflict in Ukraine. And they had all of these bioweapons facilities in Ukraine that they were going to wipe out the Slavic people because the Slavic people will not be enslaved. They tried it. They had the Soviet Union for a while, but they overthrew the bankers and threw them out of there. And so the Russian people are very, solid in their faith to God and very, very culturally, solid in their culture. They honor and respect their culture and their history. And they have a vast history, like Putin put in the libraries again, information and books on Tataria, which is part of their history for some of those in this timeline. And so now what we see is Bakhmut's 90% fallen, which the reason they didn't close that, they could have easily closed the Pincher Inn. They're way past it on both sides from the north and the south, but it's irrelevant because if you close in on the ground and they have tunnels they can drive tanks through from Chasiv Yar, it's not relevant. So what they did is they allowed a main road to be left open, and they would try to, as people try to escape and, with tanks and weapons, they just come in on the ground, they would blow the bejeebers out of them. And then in the meantime, they're having to block by block take, because almost every single major high-rise building, that's why you hear all the reporters focusing on the high-rises, has tunnels. And these tunnels go into domes that are all over under each of the biofacilities, Chernobyl, all of that, through all of Ukraine, and then hub out. And they hub out and they go one I recently learned of it, the one that goes from Kiev straight down to Odessa, Maglev, continues down to Sudan. And that's was burned, and the stuff going on in Sudan. They tried to create a color revolution because they had biolabs there. And that's what the Alliance is burning down there. And so it's in Khartoum, which is where Solomon had his book in which he learned there's hidden artifacts he had in that they had it in the dumb down there of how to enslave the demonics themselves. That's a technique that Solomon has learned. And that's why Sudan, if you look on a map, it's almost directly below Ukraine. It's incredibly straight line. Kiev is fairly close to directly above Khartoum. It's slightly off, but it's in the same general ley line energy. And so it creates a direct connection. And if you look at the Nile, it has this weird hook it does. So does that part of where Kiev and Khartoum, that hook it does, is the same as Dnieper, except Nile is unique and it runs from north to south, or what we call from south to north, because we've been told the pole's wrong. But it runs going away from the Antarctic and goes up into the Med. And the Dnieper, of course, most of the rivers on Earth go from north to south, or what is actually from south to north. And so it runs down and does that same weird hook as it goes into the Black Sea out by Crimea. And then you look at Cyprus, and I find it's not an accident. Alex, one of the guys I follow, is tightly following all of this, is in Cyprus. He's usually in Nicosia. Cyprus represents Crimea in that area of the world. So Crimea has all these pyramids and all this. Cyprus has some hidden ones too. And all of this is interconnected. And then those tunnels also hub out from Kiev to Lviv, and then from there to Geneva and CERN and all of this stuff all over the world. And so, for example, the cabal hit Turkey because they were getting a pipeline and reselling the oil that they had put in sanctions against Russian oil. And they were just remarketing it and reselling it. So now it turns out that, they hit that with earthquakes as they went into BRICS secretly. They're in BRICS. And so they hit them with an earthquake weapon, opened a portal and caused an earthquake. And they took out some of the dumbs that they had that connect to this system. They said, okay, you don't want to be part of us, we'll destroy it. And so it created massive death and earthquakes in there and in Syria. And it's interesting to watch their president or premier, whatever they call him, Assad, was walking around a marketplace. I was just looking this morning in Syria. He was walking around this morning of the May 2nd, walking around, just no bodyguards, nothing. It was interesting. And so Syria is all, and Turkey are interconnected through the tunnel systems. And Syria was where in Iraq, first Saddam Hussein, who had a Stargate that was underneath Solomon's temple in Iraq, escaped to tunnels with the power dial-up device for the power system for the dial-up device for the Stargates. And that's what actually Iraq in Desert Storm was for, was they wanted to get that Stargate. And that's why at the end of the Iraqi war, they were torturing U.S. military people. Seymour Hersh, I believe, came out with that story too. They were torturing personnel that worked in the museums of antiquity in Iraq because they wanted to know where the materials went, and they could not get that. Saddam Hussein fled to Syria, and then from there he went out other places. We'll just put that. So then also, if you follow the tunnel line from Kiev to Sudan, in between is Libya. And Libya is Nightmare Alley for creating Chimera. The whole underneath of Libya is nothing but a giant facility, like is in Dulce, the Nightmare Alley, they call it, the entire thing, where they're creating taking human beings alive and turning them into a chimera, putting other species into their genetics and creating them to turn into other type beings, a mixture of the two. So what we're seeing is the destruction of that, as Klaus Schwab, which is, one of the lower 13 houses, he's a Rothschild, had said that the Ukraine is the end of the New World Order, because the Russian people, and now Merkel's turned around, she's saying, oh, I did my very best with the Minsk Accords and all. And previously, she had said the Minsk Accords were nothing but to buy Ukraine done, to build an army, and to put all of these fortifications and tunnel systems and activate all the ones Stalin left behind. That's the majority of them, but they put in a massive amount more. So now the West is saying, they're going to have to take Russia apart. And Zelensky recently said Russia's like a chocolate cake or a delicious cake, and you got to cut it up into pieces and have take big bites. And that's what they're saying. They want to take Russia apart and monitor their resources and facilitate their usage for their people, and their, divvying them out for their people. Not by their people, they don't mean the people of Russia. They mean their people, the cabal. So what the cabal is wanting to do is create a central bank digital system that's backed by nothing at all, so they can launder all of the monies everywhere forever and monitor every single economic transaction there is on Earth. And what that would do is they would monetize everything, every plant, every tree, every single thing. It's like in Canada, they're trying to get where if you have 4 bushes and you plant a 5th bush, you violated your carbon footprint, you get negative credit score on your carbon footprint. So that then allows you to what your credit score allows, how much you can buy, what you can get, what job you can have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because they say, social credit score, we have to have this 15-minute cities, cut down the carbon footprint, all of this garbage with the carbon footprint and all that, because carbon dioxide is, most people who are following deep dives now, and the free live stream we did with Mr. Wrightstone on Rumble, that is nothing but fake science. That's propaganda science. Consensus science is fake science. It's propaganda science. It's towing a party line. It's neither green, as Dr. Harper said, nor renewable, nor, it's not remotely recyclable, and it's not viable. The they've thrown $5 trillion plus at this, getting us on wind and solar and alternative non-hydrocarbon. They call them fossil fuels, but fossils are rocks, and you're not burning a powdered rock in your car or in your diesel engine, So, or in the big ships or any of that. So it's hydrocarbons, oil and those things from gasification of heavy hydrocarbon, laden water that compresses and through gasification gets crude oil and various gases like methane, butane, etc. And so $5 trillion of trying to get on this, and it's just tiny. The last energy Decode Kevin AI did, it's a very tiny sliver that's now viably running, that's other than Denmark, which is at 37%, I think, or 30 something percent. No country's more than a total of 8% for their energy usage across the board. And you're not going to be able to do it. You would literally have to have rare earth and lithium and those kind of materials everywhere on Earth and mine it all. Turn the entire surface of the Earth into a mine to create enough green renewables. The hydrocarbon usage to create green renewables is far more barrels of oil to create them and to produce them and to manufacture them and to mine them than it does just to use the same oil to produce energy to run your vehicles and generate your electricity. When you're driving an electric car, you are not clean, because where does the electricity from the car come? You're just transferring your carbon usage to somewhere else. That had to come from a power plant, unless it's nuclear, which they're shutting those down, although now they've turned nuclear green energy. It's like, okay, we'll just call it something else. Redefine the terms, like, okay, the mass work. Okay, no, they don't work. No, they do work. No, 2 works. Well, let's just say put a whole box on your face. It's like the rate we're going. They just redefine terms as they go. Okay, it's safe based on, and we'll redefine the terms of safe. So it's like people will say, with that, I mean, it's so ludicrous. You have to laugh at how insanely ludicrous they are with their narrative. It's like somebody said, with the jab, as I can't be around people that are so heavily jabbed now because of the shedding. It's so bad now. And they said, well, why don't you just get jabbed yourself? Okay, that's like I have a gun,
Yeah.
To protect myself. I'm protecting myself by not being around you. So why don't I just take my gun and shoot myself instead and not worry about protecting myself? That'll protect me. I'm dead. Okay, so no, it's like it's utterly ludicrous what they're doing. So we're going to have an energy code that'll tie the narratives, all of them, the Ukraine, all of the narratives, the green renewables, everything together. Kevin and I will be doing that soon. So I hope that kind of, your overall umbrella question, we tended to some of it.
Yeah, that was that was a Gene answer, wasn't it? That was so much information. So much information. It's like, where to start now? I mean, the question, I mean, my initial question was going to be, what is Earth and why are we here? And I think you've kind of summarized on a huge amount of what we're doing here and why that. So if I was just kind of clarify a bit more on that then. So where are we there? Well, let's go back to Ukraine, Gene. What I know we never put timescales on anything. It's more about events, isn't it? Certain things have to happen in regards to that now. What control have the cabal, the dark hats, the bloodlines? What have they got now?
Yeah, in Ukraine, we can actually put a pretty much of a timeline on it now, actually. It's bizarre, but we can. One of the few places we can. 90% of Bakhmut's gone. And that was as of yesterday. It's going fast. So I haven't checked today. But when it's 100% gone, and they're going block by block, and even still, there's very small sliver left. That means all the tunnels are under control too. All those tunnels starting through the salt mines and the industrial areas and the city buildings and the schools and all of that. That means the whole thing. Putin is having to, and Poroshenko and all of these people are having to mark time because they're timing everything to go at the same time. There's a series of progression. The dominoes have to fall in series. If you make them fall out of series, you miss a part of the loops. So the Masara Jasara reset, the gold standard, which is BRICS, and it's looking like they're going to have a lot more freedom in the US for each, and it may be in the UK, like Scotland would have its own gold-backed currency, Ireland would have its own gold-backed currency, the Welsh would have their own gold-backed currency, the British would have their own gold-backed currency, the US, the different states, Texas will probably be the first where they'll have their own gold-backed state currency. In actuality, for the United States and the original Constitution, the Constitution for these United States of America, that Constitution for, not of, and these, not the, and United States, only the first letter of each word capitalized. Each individual state was supposed to come into the United States by a treaty as an individual state country. Texas did it right. Only I think 4 countries of the US did it. In other words, states. So the states will wind up having their own individually gold-backed currencies, and the states will have a lot more power. It's supposed to be like if you hold up your middle finger, your index finger, and your thumb, the power of the country is supposed to be the county being your middle finger, the most powerful and highest, the state, and then the central government, not the federal government. The federal was a creation. That was a creation of the fake constitution, which of the Organic Act of 1871, in which they enslaved the United States and made a corporate entity or a corporation. So in that, it reversed. But now what we're looking at, the states will have a whole lot more control of what goes on, and they will be not under the central government. They will be above the central government in their power structure, and they can get centralized aid if they need for roads and those kind of things. But a lot of these laws and things that when Trump gets back in, which is extremely likely, he said he's going to totally destroy the deep state. They're having to mark time as the Hunter laptop and all this is his indictment, his arrest. Part of the disclosure of evidence is the Hunter Biden laptop, and that talks about Ukraine and Burisma Holdings and all of this childhood trafficking and money laundering that's all over the Hunter Biden laptop. All of that's in there, going to China, the Dominion machines that Tucker Carlson talked about. He talked about the Dominion machines. He talked about Big Pharma. He talked about January 6th, and all of that's on there. The video footage he shared is on the Hunter laptop too. They taking the Buffalo Shaman and being escorted through the White House and doors open for him and then being escorted out and the police there when he's in there. And it was all peaceful and they're all doing all of this. There was none of the stuff that they said. What the shooting and all that was a movie script that they shot on location after he was out of there. So a whole lot of things have been made to be a movie. This is what they did. The same thing with 911. They had all the cameras in place and all of the crisis actors in place. Same crisis actors we see Oklahoma City or the shopping mall here where somebody goes shoot up, or this church or Christchurch or whatever it is. They go all over the world, these crisis actors. They have them in place. So the Alliance is doing the same thing. They're having actors and people in camera. So lately there was a person a coffin being carried into the White House. A woman just happened to have her camera set up at the perfect angle at the perfect time. Just happened to be there, did she? Yeah, right, sure. Chances are pretty minute. So it is a movie. We're watching movies. And so they're timing these movies, the Alliance, so that a series of events will happen, just like they did with 911 and Homeland Security and all that. And then the wars, all of those are a series of events that Albert Pike put into motion when he wrote Morals and Dogma, and he wrote the battle plans for World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Cambodia, Desert Storm, and World War III. Well, World War III isn't going to happen. We'll get to the brink of it, but it's not going to happen because in actuality, nuclear or even tactical, you can use some limited tactical nuclears that, backpacks or little tiny suitcases or something that are extremely powerful. They're more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki put together, but still, you can't do ICBMs anymore. Anything that goes up or in orbit or vast nuclear explosions all over the earth at the same time could have never been done, number one, due to physics. Again, they're not explaining the true nature of nuclear physics to people, or it would be obvious if people were thinking that they don't think well. Why didn't Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island have a mushroom-shaped cloud over them? They went supercritical. Same thing as Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What's the difference? Why didn't they go kaboom? It's not because they have containment vessels. Containment vessel, all that does is keep your cooling and all of that contained, and nuclear radiation contained within shielding. But I mean, you hit supercritical, it'll blow that shielding to pieces, as pretty obviously seen in the Bikini Atoll when they blew those ships and all that up with a massive blast. And so these blasts have to happen on ley lines. The big, huge power plants like the one in Ukraine, which was supplying power for most of southeastern Europe, are not built on ley lines for that very reason. So if you go supercritical like Chernobyl, it doesn't create a vast blast. You get a nuclear waste mess, but you do not have a blast. You have to be on a ley line, and it has to be timed. It takes a trinity of things to happen to have a nuclear explosion. And so what you have to have is on the ley line at supercritical mass, on the static ley line that runs from pole to pole. And then you have moving ley lines that come out of the equator and they separate at the equator. positive and negative, and the negative wave goes towards the positive pole, the positive wave goes towards the negative pole. Opposites attract. And so that, as they pull apart at the equator, creates a spinning effect, or St. Elmo's fire. And so as that moving line crosses the static line, you have to hit, it's a crosshair, you have to hit that within 1 second degree of arc, and within 1 second of the cross, when it crosses exactly. You have to be within 1 second. If you're more than 1 second late, you'll have a mess. You won't have a blast. That's what all of the nuclear testing was for. I mean, other than to see what it does the second time, let's monitor it and have all kinds of, technology and cameras and measuring apparatus. Yeah, do that 2 or 3 times. So why hundreds of tests? Because they're seeing the dynamics of how far we can, it's how they know it's 1 second. What if we do 3 seconds off, 2 seconds off? Nope, it doesn't work. What if we're more than 1 degree of arc off, or 1 minute? What if we're 1 minute arc? Nope, doesn't go off. So they're figuring out precisely where the ley lines are, what the timing is, and how close you have to be to the timing and the crossing. And so with the huge reactor in Ukraine, during the Obama timeframe, when he was president, he sent nuclear material with refined weapons grade uranium and plutonium to Africa, Sudan. And from Sudan, at one of the award shows, Alex Trebek stood up, and I believe his wife is from Slovenia, but they were wanting to send it there, but they couldn't. It wound up being sent to Ukraine. And so it went to a nuclear weapons laboratory underneath the reactor in Ukraine. That's why the various heads of state, Secretary of Defense, and those people in the US have said to Russia, that is US state security, do not touch it. What is there? They know about nuclear technology and reactors and weapons. They have it all. What is there that's so sensitive that they feel the Russians could remove? Nuclear weapons, uranium, and plutonium. That's what. Because it's underneath. Why is it underneath? You would be able to detect a nuclear signature from space. If it was sitting out by itself somewhere, they'd say, oh, there it is. But if it's sitting under a reactor, well, of course you're going to see a nuclear signature there. It's a reactor, Yeah. But they do, oh, let's hide it under there. It's a perfect hiding place. So this ties to Ukraine as well. And it ties to Sudan again. It ties Ukraine. Like I say, everything's all tied up together. So the timing for Ukraine is being timed to Jasara and Nasara. Hungary is already in it, and they are already stating, they've signed a deal for nuclear materials and other new reactors and other things to be built. They're in BRICS as well. And so they're probably going to be the first to front out, maybe either be thrown out of the NATO and the EU, maybe just be thrown out, or they will leave. But Orban, and they're trying to create a color revolution, the Samantha powers, the regular powers that be show up in your country. That's not a good sign. It means they're getting rioters together, like same in Georgia, to create a color revolution, overthrow your government. With Syrian President Assad, they weren't able to do it. And so they are saying, and I love the interview with presentation by a UN person who was giving a presentation, and the ambassador for life from China asked him, what about the terrorist attacks in Syria, where US military personnel died? Because he said the US military has no bases in Syria and no military personnel in Syria. It's in Western media and in US media reports that US personnel were injured in Syria. If you don't have them there, how'd they get injured there if they're not there? So all of this is tied together. And now we see China brokering a long-term peace with various states that have been at war for hundreds of years, Yemen being one, Iran being another. Yemen is in an area where there's a lot of rare earths, plus the fact that it's so much oil in that part of the world. It's like in Ukraine, they say in the Donbass area, you could stick a stick in the ground and it'll grow because of the black earth. And Hitler had actually sent back boxcars of that, freight cars of that stuff, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful for growing. It's just so full of organic material. Well, in the part where Yemen is, it's so much oil, you could stick a stick in the ground, you'll hit oil. It's like, the Beverly Hillbillies while out shooting for some food, and he bullet glasses off the ground and oil came out, that kind of idea. So Ukraine, all of what the Russians have taken in Ukraine, Crimea, and that Crimea is all kinds of ancient nuclear technologies, pyramids, and a Stargate system, and then also an arc, and then another arc up in the Donbass region, and then additionally the Donbass is rare earths and all of the agricultural and mining. That's why you're seeing Bakhmut and the salt mines and all that. The salt mines and all that salt is because that used to be under the Black Sea and that area when the oceans were much higher. So much for, the oceans rising. What are they doing? Rising back to where they used to be or something like that. But the salt there is important for certain non-terrestrial species, actually shown in the first Star Trek series. They'd eat salt, and they'll eat salt. They have little kind of like octopus suckers on their tentacles, and they eat salt. And they need that salt. And the salt mines in Ukraine are where they had their domes. And so we have a large non-terrestrial presence of octopus-like creatures and other creatures, plus getting rid of all the old technologies and bringing in these new technologies of particle weapons and all of that. And so that's why you see all the Western powers shipping all of these antiquated technology, like Terry Cassidy said, of tanks and aircraft and all that, because F-16s, you really think that, they had the TR-3 in 1947. They went to the moon on Mars with one in 1947. And we're going to have an F-16. What do you think an F-16 would do against a TR-3 that has a particle weapon? It wouldn't last 3 seconds. It's just like these ancient technologies.
So you're saying they're sending them there to be destroyed?
They're sending there to be destroyed on purpose, to get rid of it all, so you can empty out your warehouse and get paid for it. So like in EU, they have a peace fund, which all the countries that sent weapons and tanks to Ukraine can pull money back to rebuild what they sent. And they're saying, okay, we sent a Tiger 1. So we're going to build a brand new Tiger 2. No, you're not actually, but even still, that's not a fair trade. If it's like you're driving a car and it's a 1963 Volvo and you get totaled, and you go to your insurance company and say, okay, get me a brand new Volvo. Well, your car is a 63, so we're going to take depreciation based on the age and of the vehicle. And you don't get a brand new 2000 and whatever Volvo because your car was old. You're going to have to add some money to the kitty to get that. But they're going to this peace fund and pulling out the money as if they sent a brand new Tiger in there, brand new Tiger 2. But that's not even what they're pulling for. They're pulling to build brand new technologies, the Patriot systems that Russia, because the Ukrainians sent a massive drone launch into areas of Donetsk, Donbass, nothing having to do with a military target. They killed children, they killed women, and they sent a massive drone launch to Moscow, which they didn't have enough fuel. They can't carry enough fuel to get to Moscow from Ukraine. They don't have the range. And so they fell before they hit Putin's new compound where he was. The idea was to kill Putin. So the Russians have started to retaliate. And in this retaliation, they're taking out train lines, train centers. They're getting ready for the offensive, their offensive. The spring offensive, summer, fall, whatever it winds up being for the Ukrainians, they really have expended the majority of those materials and the majority of those troops in Bakhmut and Avdiivka. So what they have left will be to try to stop the Russian offensive. They may launch, the main offensive they're doing is these drone launches. And the M155s. So there's a lot of that, and that stuff is really lethal. When it goes off, there's some really, really rough footage released on social media of like two old women walking through Donetsk, and they heard it coming in and they tried to take cover and they didn't make it, and that thing went off and it shredded their bodies. And that was up on social media. It's pretty horrific stuff because they're not hitting military targets, the Russian are. And when they finish taking out that stuff, they, as Putin said, you want to fight us on the ground? Go ahead and try. We haven't even started. The Russians, like they have in the past, when they were the Soviet Union, they fielded 1 million people in the field in a week. They could field 1 million, but they have 720,000 in eastern Ukraine and another 120,000 plus. I just know it's over that in Belarus, and another 240,000 on the border of Russia and Ukraine. And then they have over 13,000 tanks in those areas. New stuff with the particle stuff on it. It's like, you are toast. Plus, they have their new aircraft and all of this stuff and new technologies. When they go ahead and try. As Putin said, see how that works for you and see how well the sanctions have worked on them. They just came out that all of the oil that Europe is using, 97% of it's coming from India.
Russia, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Russian oil.
It's just China's buying it and just selling it to us for more.
Yeah, sell it to India. They put 3 drops of oil from India in a barrel. It's Indian oil. Yeah, 3 drops of it. So, yeah, it's just a game. And Russia's sales have, the amount of money, their volume of oil sold is way down. But the price they're selling it for is so far up, they've made more money. The amount of money they made on oil is vastly more than before the offensive. I call that a win. I can sell my product. I don't have to make as much, but I make more money. Okay, I'll make half as much, and I make twice as much money. Well, that's a win.
Oh, it hasn't done it before. I mean, and if anything as well, I mean, it's opened the door for BRICS, hasn't it? Once they've done that with the sanctions, the rest of the world have kind of gone, hang on a minute. If they don't like what they've done with Russia there, when they took all the oligarchs' money and the yachts and emptied the bank accounts, so, well, they could do it to Russia, they could do it to us. So it's just kind of pushed BRICS along and stuff, hasn't it? In regards to, well, we're going to get an alternative currency, and and I think it's got to the stage now. I think from last I heard, I think there's more people in the world. I think it's about 4 million or 4 billion, I should say, of the population, which is now siding with BRICS, and more are asking to join. So that it's definitely tipping in the direction of BRICS, where obviously the reserve currency is going to go down and weaken the likes of America and Europe.
Yeah, the sanctions, you're completely right. All they've done is push countries into BRICS. And also, because it's like you said, all the countries of the world see the sanctions because they're sanctioning, Hungary, parts of Hungary, their bankers and certain organizations to start. That's how they start. And they're seizing people's properties, oligarchs. The oligarchs are going, well, we'll pull our stuff out of your country. We're going to pull it out of the EU. We're going to pull it out of NATO countries. We're going to pull it out of the United States. We're going to pull it out of the UK. They had a peace treaty signed with Zelensky. The reason for the Kiev offensive was a shock and awe, and it worked. Zelensky went to the peace tables in Turkey, and they had it ironed out. And then Boris Johnson shows up. You will do nothing of the kind. We will give you vast millions and billions of dollars. And Zelensky's eyes go, lots of homes all over the world. I can launder all that and give you 10%, and I get 90. I give you 10, I give 10 for the offensive, and then me and my guys get 80%. It's like Alex is always saying, he's talking to Xi, oh yes, yes, we agree. And also, do you have some billions of dollars that you can give me? Because I would love to buy a home in Beijing. I have a home I would like to buy. So this is, all the weapons and all of this stuff is just mostly, even the mainstream news is printed in the US that 70% was being laundered, and then they retract that because they were told to. That was the truth. And that's a win for the military industrial complex, because now those weapons go out onto the black market, all that money, all that materials and money to create a war. So what do? Now you got a war in this country. Now you got a war in that country. They make a fortune. It's all designed. With Afghanistan, they were able to track everything coming in. You think if they were losing billions of dollars in weapons and they cared that it wasn't in their plans, that they would allow it? No, they could get weapons inspectors and audit and everything in that place in Ukraine. The reason they're not is it's in their interest to not. So Zelensky saw the dollar bills in his eyes when Boris took him aside, said, we do not agree to a peace treaty. They had everything worked out. They would have kept the majority of the Donbass. They, of course, wouldn't have got Crimea, but they've lost all of that. And now what's likely to be left is pretty much nothing. Maybe Kiev will be Ukraine, because
Did you see, or did you hear, Gene, about the when Ukraine attacked Russia as well, that Russia used one of the hypersonic missiles in Kiev?
Yeah, that actually was very difficult. So they did a terrorist attack into Belgorod in Russia. And that was, again, a school and children and all of this. And now they have a bunch of parents in Kiev and saying, give our children back, for the ones that the Russian military removed to get out of the line of fire and being killed, and put in schools where they can get art and music and all of this. It's beautiful schools. It's not a holding compound. They're free and they can move around, and they have beautiful facilities and room and board and all of that. And they offered the parents to come up and be with their children as well. So that's not what they're, of course, the indictment on Putin from the international court system. And then South Africa, they're going to have a BRICS meeting down there. It said they are going to pull out, and they said, no, you're not. And he said, no, sorry, we misstated ourselves. So there's still some power in the West, but mostly not. And so with the oligarchs pulling out of all this and all of that going in, pulling their monies, because you can do it to us, it's all pushing everything into BRICS faster and faster. 97% of the world's population by countries, it's 97% that are in BRICS in actuality. So, what's left is, a few countries of the Five Eyes that are not in, essentially, as UK, where you are, and then US, where I am, and Australia, and Canada, the Five Eyes, etc. And so
it has been mentioned. It has been mentioned that the UK is. I've heard that the UK is, and it's not going to be backed by gold. It's going to be backed by silver.
Yeah, silver is actually,
and also Germany has also applied.
Yes, Germany is actually in, and we're going to watch more than likely Olaf Scholz, Baerbock, and those people being overthrown and taken to tribunals. In the case of France, with their writing, which is off the chart, we're likely to see something like Louis XIV, because a lot of the police, unbeknownst to the Macron government, have joined the sides of the rioters, and they're going to let them through at a certain time frame, is what I've heard. I'm not knowing what the time frame is, and if I did, I wouldn't say it. I would say I'm not knowing what the time frame is, but it's likely they will let them in, and Macron better be out of the country. Little Napoleon. But when he went to Zelensky said, you can run the EU. as the head and make it back to a trade organization and put in a gold and silver standard and be part of BRICS, and we'll make you a special deal. And they wined and dined him. And of course, van der Leyen went up there with him as his handler. And they put her on a commercial flight home, like kind of was coach class or something. It was pathetic. Even if it was business class, and she's waiting an hour, a many hour layover, 7 hours something layover on a 14-hour flight. I'm like, oh, but I've been on those. I know how miserable that is. I did a 7-hour layover in Turkey one time, in the capital of Turkey, on a flight that was a 14-hour flight from India. Oh, it was like, oh, you can't sleep in the airport. I mean, I even went to a wing that was under construction where I tried to get some quiet, and you get those bucket plastic seats. It's like, like, you don't want to lay on the floor. It's filthy, but where are you going to sleep? A table, I guess. Okay. And the tables you have to balancing act. So she was pretty terribly treated. She had to go through customs like everybody else, shore passport. It's like, and so, what we see is the governments of the world are being rolled in, and silver is a much wiser backing. In actuality, I invested in silver myself instead of gold because of the fact that there's only so much silver on Earth, and that will not grow. The amount of silver will be what the amount of silver will be unless you take it off world. So silver is going to continue to increase and increase against gold. It's starting to rise now beyond the rate that gold's rising. It'll pass gold significantly. And gold does keep increasing how much there is, because it's transmuted from particle bombardment from quartz crystals into gold. That's why you see brittle-lated quartz where there's gold strands in the crystal, because as it picks up through bombardment, it creates new protons in the nucleus of the atom of the quartz, and it becomes gold. So it's literally like alchemy, but natural alchemy, and it picks up the energy structure of the area. It's why they were hoarding and bringing it all into the Dome in the Vatican, is the energies of all over the earth on there. So you can put it in a big, huge energy vortex and control all of the grid system of the entire earth, so that you don't even need Saturn as a soul trap. All of them would be pulled into the Vatican. Every person that died, their soul would be pulled into the Vatican. You'd be in a permanent, so you wouldn't even leave the earth. They were the 15-minute cities. That's exactly what it would be. 15 minutes from where you were born, over and over and over, the same place forever. That would be it. You die, you come back there. You die, you come back there again. You die, you come back there again. They wanted utter control, carbon footprint, social credit score. By the way, China does not have a social credit score system. Watch Brian in New Atlas. He goes into that. They also are not called the CCP. They're called the CPC, Communist Party of China, not the Communist Chinese Party or Chinese Communist Party. None of those. It's the Communist Party of China, CPC. That's cabal when you hear CCP. Most people go along with that. I'll go ahead and say it so people know what I'm involved, but I'll probably mostly use CPC. They don't have a social credit score, except for in a few small locations, like you use the subway or something, and you have a credit score there. So if you're smoking on the subway or something, you get points off, and you will wind up losing your privilege. Or you have a dog and you don't pick up after the dog, you'll lose your privileges to walk in that park or something like that. That's about all they have. And so they adopted that, said, oh, they have this. Yeah, I agree that, China doesn't care about the earth. That's for darn sure, with what I showed in the 9th Decode on Kevin and I, with what they do in China for processing the materials and things that they do. But they are proceeding, they go into countries, Russia and China, when they go into countries, they don't sit there and create a color revolution and overthrow their governments and become their governments. They build Belt Road Initiative, they build factories, they build nuclear reactors, they bring the country up stronger, they create a viable industry there that's owned by the country. So you have a powerful trade partner. and you trade in their currencies backed on gold and silver, like they're already doing. So the gold, they have yuan and ruble, and in India, the rupee. So India trades with Russia. They're trading, and so if there's a trade deficit, they just exchange gold, and then they trade in their own currencies. And then Nigeria and Chad are doing that because lo and behold, they found $1 trillion in gold in a cave. Wow, just like the lady with the camera, just happened to be there at the perfect place at the perfect time. How amazing is that? So, this is coincidence, and we'll see this all over Africa. That's what Gaddafi was doing, where they took him out in Libya. So, of course, that's what we're seeing is a gold and silver standard rolling out like Gaddafi was doing. And when he opened it up, he brought in to his currencies and his system to the whole world, and to Africa first. They took him out because he opened his borders, opened everything up, and that opened up so he could get a color revolution done to him. As Michael Jacob put out on Nicholas Vignamin the other day.
Michael Jacob put what out? Sorry,
he talked about the color revolution done to coffee.
I mean, I heard something the other day as well that in Uganda, I think they found a section in Uganda. I'm sure it's Uganda, where they've just found just one section where there's up to £2 trillion of gold.
Yep.
And when you think what's been stored in them tunnels and what's been moved, and the ones in Zimbabwe and then the ones in Germany were found, the Vatican, the tunnels to Switzerland, that amount of gold is only going to devalue. As far when the whole idea of anything when it holds that value is that it's scarcity. But when you find out it's got far more gold than we ever thought was ever in this world, to me, it's going to devalue. And as you said there, I think that the fact that there's silver, there's only an infinite amount, isn't it? And I know obviously some of it's made anyway as a is it through other products, isn't it? Like copper and tin, is it that forms silver as well? Is that correct? Or
yeah, you're perfectly correct. So that's in the Grand Canyon Decode, we put out that the reason they made so you can't mine in the Grand Canyon or even dredge for gold in the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon is the amount of gold in the Grand Canyon alone would have collapsed the Fed. So they were getting the Fed into going at that time. They didn't want that gold flooding in. It would devalue the value of gold. So the same thing goes with what they found just in, like you mentioned, in Uganda. The amount of gold is going to drastically drop the value of gold. If they were to release the fact that most of the Alps in Germany, Switzerland, Italy, etc., were full of gold, they hollowed them out and filled them up with the gold they've been stealing all over the world for eons. It's a vast amount of gold. You're talking, millions of metric tons, way more, probably much more than millions of metric tons of gold, a vast storehouse of gold. The amount of gold on Earth would make gold worth something like tin or iron ore. It has a lot of industrial usage. It's a very excellent conductor. One of the very best there is, unless you go into superconductive materials, which graphene oxide can become. But and there's others too. But the gold also has ability to be rendered monatomic, which then has a lot of healing properties for planetary systems, as well as if they're used appropriately for people. But gold, with its value, other than its industrial usage value and its beauty, it's something that's unique. Silver does tarnish where gold does not. So gold has some jewelry value that's above and beyond, although the native groups to the US value silver in a tarnished condition. It reminds me of a story my stepfather, my mom's second husband, told me. He was a surveyor for the USGS, and he was out working his fellow surveyor was a Navajo, who was out on the Navajo reservations out there, and they were surveying, and he went at one of these stands and he got a silver belt buckle with turquoise in it, and he went to this gentleman. He said, "Is this authentic Navajo jewelry?" And Navajo never will tell you. They are been taught from childhood that it's impolite to say no to someone when they ask questions, to contradict them or something. That to say no and contradict them is impolite. So he said, "Is this authentic Navajo jewelry?" And the gentleman said, "Yes, not Navajo." He goes, "This is not Navajo?" He goes, "Yes, this is not Navajo." In other words, the person selling it had polished the silver, and the Navajo do not polish it. They think that the tarnish and the aging of the silver shows the energy and the quality of where it is, and it does in actuality. It, again, like gold, as it transmutates, gets the energy of where it transmutates. And silver, where it tarnishes, it gets the energy of where it tarnishes. It's getting oxidized such that it's pulling in the energy of that area. And that's why the Navajo do that. And so silver in the tarnished state actually has more energy potential and value than in the polished state. But it's also has, has some other industrial uses as well. But it being far more rare, it has, once the amount of gold on Earth is realized, so much more value. It's so much more rare than gold.
Going back to the Ukraine one as well, what I remember you were saying there, what we're fighting. You just touched on it before. What is it that we're fighting in Ukraine?
The original bloodlines, upper lineages, and their non-terrestrial handlers.
So the non-terrestrial.
The Urantia that came from the Scion constellation, that's where they fell, is Bakhmut and the Pontic steppes in the Carpathians. That's their home. That's where they fell. And then they went to Egypt and the Holy Land in different areas to enslave and gain power and take over. And they went into the Judaic faith, the Hebrew, to take over the Sanhedrin, replace them, and become the leaders of the Jewish faith, and then make it Talmudic, where it was not originally. It was originally from the writings of Ishmael, who was one of the sons of Abraham. And so in that, it was one of the three original Abrahamic religions, and they destroyed that. They had hundreds of years after Ishmael had wrote the tenets of the Quran, as not even as the Quran, it was actually called something else. He wrote the Quran. He took them and rewrote them into what is the Quran with all the Shahira law and all of that garbage, and made it a just decrepit system. Terrible, demonic, evil, the way it's done in the upper levels. Same as most of the faiths, where in the upper levels, same is true with the Masons when they put the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt put the Illuminati into the Masons at the 33rd degree and above. It made it decrepit. It made it evil. It made it satanic. That's what they do. And so at the upper levels, what you're actually worshiping is Satan himself. All of the tenets, all of the rituals are satanic rituals, and the dates and times they're practiced. Like we just finished Beltane yesterday, May Day. And of course, that's when the Soviet Union was founded, was May Day. And that's what you say when your aircraft is crashing, May Day, May Day. You're going down. You're going down into the worship of Satan. And so this is all satanic and everything, and that's their highest holiday of the year. It speaks to their whole system of what they are founded in. And so now what we're seeing is all of that coming down. And so they're in a panic, not through fear. They don't do fear because they don't have soul to have fear in, but they do panic. They're in a panic mode because they're in a defensive mode, and they've never been in a defensive mode. They're offensive oriented only. They have no knowledge of how to be flexible in battle, of how to come through your intuition, because they can't go through their intuition because they don't have it. Same as AI. It doesn't have intuition. It cannot connect to God. The intuition connects to God, the throne of God. You're getting knowledge directly from the source of all things. And you're getting knowledge and information of what to do in the moment that can't track it, like the interview with Gary Cassidy. Let's go all these different ways at once, because AI can't track that. It's like, what the heck are you? How did it all come back to where we started? It's like it cannot do that. Once it sees it, it can turn it into data and go, okay, they can do this. But if you do it different every single time, it can't track. If you're in the flow of battle and you're put on a defensive and you know how to make a defensive move offensive, they don't know how to do that. In martial arts, I do it all the time. It's Sun Tzu's art of war, is how to, they know Sun Tzu's art of war, but they can't use it in a lifetime scenario of flexibility in battle. So what we're seeing is that they're panicked out and they're throwing everything they can. It's why it's so out in the open. Everything is literally out in the open because they got people dumbed down so much. They go, oh yeah, that's cool. To teach our children, like the WHO and the UN has said that children should be taught how to give each other oral sex in elementary school and have partners. No, not even close. Not even, as Trump says, not even close. But it's a total degradation of humanity. A child is not supposed to be sexual until a certain age, and to teach them that is depraved. And they want to do that so that they can have sex with them, the adults of the cabal. This is what they've been doing for ages. The priests take an oath of celibacy to not have sex with women. So who do you think they're having sex with? The altar boys, as we know for a very, very long time now. This has been going on for eons. This is the way they do it. And so in this worship of the false gods, they have changed certain small things within the Bible. And so in that, the gift of Christ, the forgiving of the cross, that through reincarnation and these tortures in the soul trap, to not believe in reincarnation, to not know it's for real, to eradicate someone's memory of all what's done to them in the soul trap in previous lifetimes, and not to have those memories. I haven't been in there, but I recently was able to work with somebody at a telepathic level that's wide open to do that. And I saw what happened in the soul trap, and I go, that's why. That's why they're giving them false lifetimes where they did stuff. And that's what Christ forgave. And if you don't believe in that, you can't perceive it. You will never remember it because you can't believe it's true. You'll go somewhere and find something and you left in another lifetime, like I have all over the earth. I've gone to Japan and found it unburied a temple I used to meditate at as a samurai. You're going to explain that away? How would I know it's there? I went right to it and buried it. I found a tree I planted when it was 50 years old with my katana. I cut my kanji into it and I found the tree. I knew to go up on top of the hill above the 1,000 lakes in Sasebo and go around and look on this one tree. How do you explain that? That's, a memory. And people are going to go, that's coincidence? Or what? I mean, what are you going to explain that with? But they don't want you to have that knowledge and memories. Because if you start remembering what they've been doing for eons, I've known all this stuff for a very long time. That's why I am able to know what I know, because I have a vast memory storage. And that's also why they made human beings not eternal, because you have a vast memory storage. You can't rewrite history because people will know what it was. That memory is there. I was there in the history, like Patton said. I was here on the battlefield. I remember. And it allowed him to win that battle. It allows you to win battles and to see through the baloney they're putting out there because you remember what was real. And, they didn't even have the word reincarnation at the time that it was put in, the Bible was being written. So they had to use transmigration of the spirit or resurrection. But if you're saying in the book of, let's see, what's that called? Malachi, where Elijah has to come back for the Son of God to come to earth. So Christ is there talking to the disciples later. Well, you can't take that out of the book of Malachi. Take the book of Malachi, or at that time with the Old Testament, you pretty much eradicated the Old Testament. So you don't have Christianity. And they're using that. And so then when Christ is talking to the disciples and he says, the disciples are asking him, if you're the Son of God, then where's Elijah? He's supposed to return before you come. And he goes, he is here. You just don't recognize him because Elijah is John the Baptist. Well, how could he be John the Baptist? He was Elijah, because he's reincarnated. There's no other way. If his spirit has gone from being Elijah to John the Baptist, he's in a new body. So kind of that, we call that reincarnation today. And there's so much proof in the Bible that people just don't see it. So that reincarnation Decode, I'm actually working on that. And then when I finish, we'll get the editors, and I'm pretty sure we'll get that right in this month too, into deep dive. So they don't want this vast storehouse of knowledge and memories. And, in the Bible itself, it does say that only in the end times, which is another sign that we're in the end times, will people start to wake up to it. So even the mind wipes they've done coming out of the North Polar Storm of Saturn are no longer holding. And people are starting to remember past lives that have been in the soul traps. They're going, I remember between lifetimes. They remember in the soul trap. They remember before the soul traps. Many, many times I was here. I did this. I did that. And so this vast memory is coming back. And so we're in an amazing time. And, yeah, go ahead, James.
So I take it this is the Great Awakening you're referring to then?
Yes, indeed. Exactly.
And where it talks about the event that has to happen, does it get to a point there that obviously each time now more and more people are waking, the memories are coming back, we're knowing that we're being lied to, manipulated, we're starting to get memories back of our previous lives, and then when it gets to the event, is it a sudden thing where that will come back to us in that event, or will that be the solar flash? Will that be where it comes back to us, where everyone gets back their previous memories or their previous lives or experiences? Or
yeah, the solar flash will cause everybody to have it automatically and quickly, very, very quickly. It'll happen then. But even before that, now, as more people start to have slight things happen, that opens the door for more. And as like just hearing the soul trap decode, even those that go, no, that's impossible, or the reincarnation decode, no, that's impossible, it puts it in your mind.
It plants the seed, doesn't it? Yeah.
It opens the door to the truth. That's what they do with their same situation with the Tavistock Institute of Long Range Preconditioning, where they put it out in movies. They put it out. It does two things. It says, we're going to do this, which is going to God's court and going, we are going to do this or this or this. And if nobody shows up to dispute the court case, the ruling's for the only person there, which is them. We didn't know that. So we do envisioning to stop that now, which is a prayer to God to say how we want it to be instead of what this garbage here, evil, destructive, deadly, terrifying stuff that they want to have. And so it creates a new future. And in that, and then additionally, the memories coming back online of people remembering how it was is a new way to envision. Plus, it opens up and combines those two such that as the memories start to come back, it opens up others to have the same thing happen, because there's a common substrate for all of a species. So every being of a species shares this common unconscious, really down bottom layer of unconscious is shared by every person in the species. You can see it like in Japan. They saw that there's these monkeys that have learned for a certain fruit, they have to go wash it in the sea first, and the salt helps to get some toxins off the outside of the fruit. Well, they learned this on one island, and very shortly, all the islands of Japan the monkeys were doing it. And the same thing goes with a parrot that was in Madagascar, and on the only other place is it was in the Amazon jungle. And this fruit that grows there, they knew to take this fruit and after they eat it, fly to this cliff and get this clip. So they took the birds from Madagascar that didn't know this to the Amazon. And they got the fruit, ate the fruit, and flew to the bank. You've never even seen it. They just got there. How in the world do they know? They knew because it's in the common substrate of the unconscious. It's like you see, there's over 800 known examples of people inventing something on Earth at 2 different places, or 4 or 7 or something, different places at the same time, with no contact with each other, none at all, like Leibniz and Newton, discovering calculus, but they do it differently because they have their own take on things. So both ways are very powerful and usable in different ways. It's very advantageous to have 2 systems. And so inventions coming out in slightly different all over in different places on Earth is very advantageous because you can then combine them and use them. And, the 2 halves are more than the summation of their parts. You can better than just, one person inventing it and so in this, it's because they're at the cutting edge of that idea. And the minds that are at the cutting edge will pick it up first. And that then opens it up for one slightly less at the cutting edge. It's what you're calling leading the wave, at the tip of the wave, in the wave. So now with the knowledge, like in the US, most people know that Biden didn't win.
Exactly.
Media makes you think he did. That's what most people believe, but it's very obvious if you look at the ceremonies to swear in who, and then you look at Trump traveling, and you look at Biden traveling. Biden shows up, he's got 4 or 5 security guys that are kind of looking around, chewing gum, really relaxed, they're real calm. And they don't know these moves going to want to kill this idiot. He's not the president anyway. Who do we care? We don't care. Go ahead. He's just a disaster area anyway. He can barely make it off stage without being escorted. Even then, it's a challenge. His time has come. So, and then you look at Trump. He has a vast military escort. When he went into that court, he has a vast escort of Secret Service, and they're tense. They're checking out everything. They're sharp. They're looking around. They're all over it. They're on top of it. He has a vast entourage, and he has all of these doubles, and Biden's got none. It's rather obvious what's going on, and most people know. The mainstream media is trying to keep the lid on this all over the world. The one that's pretty much owned by 3 organizations. JP Sears did a brilliant one of his satires where he said, we know the media is totally independent because nobody sees this chart where 3 organizations run them all that we just showed here, but nobody knows that exists because it's so hidden, although we have it here. So it's like they're trying to keep the lid, but most people in the world know what the truth of Ukraine is, know what the truth of BRICS is, know what the truth of the elections are in every country on Earth. They know the truth.
I think that's right. No, and I think what you see now is that whilst there are some people who will watch mainstream media, the vast majority of now are getting their information elsewhere, and they're finding out the truth.
Yeah,
and finding out that what's there, so that whilst the media might be spewing out this and trying to, obviously, they might be getting to some people, they're not getting to the vast majority, because most people now know they're being lied to, know they're being manipulated to, know that the governments are corrupt. And that's why you can see now a lot of them standing up, and what's happening in France now, I can see that happening in other countries, because they know that's what at some point we're going to have to do. That we're going to have to stand up to it and decide this isn't going to happen to us.
Yeah. What I see, for example, with Tucker Carlson, he was contacted by the Alliance and said to put out January 6th, put out Big Pharma, put out this, put out this, put out this. Then they will remove you to control the election. But in the process of removing this person that nobody watches, only 3.4 million Only 3.4 million follow him, more than all the rest of the media combined. It's like he creates a massive wave to where he goes, leaves the mainstream media. To wherever he lands and whatever he puts out now is going to be listened more than ever before. The main people are.
And that's what I think. I think I heard someone say that as well. Now he's saying basically he's done his job now. So what he was doing, and part of what, because he's left now, he can now start saying what he was made to do in Fox News. He'll be able to explain some of the narratives that they were forced to take. So now he's free and he's independent. He can say whatever he wants now and start getting even more truth out. And I think they said the actual viewing figures have dropped by a half since he's left.
Yeah, the Fox News dropped over $1 billion in value in their stock values, and it's the same as Bud with their that was in that
the Bud Light,
with their gay drink, their trans drink, whatever it's called. And the lady that did that campaign, then she disappeared, and JP is saying, well, maybe Fox News hired them, and she had the same plan to grow their stock by decreasing it massively and over $1 billion in value in a week. So maybe they hired her. She said, let me bring to you the same stock benefits I did to Button, and I will let's fire Tucker. That'll really help. Same thing. So it's just hilarious to watch it, all of it. But I totally agree that what we're seeing is that people are going to vastly go to Tucker. He may take over Parler. By that, he was making a fortune. The amount of money he was making a year that he's been making for a very long time, he could, or Elon could help him, or the Alliance could help him, and he could get his own social media, his own thing, and put out his own information. There's loopholes in his contract. They said certain things he can't do, but since they're paying him to do something that they're not having him do, they're violating the contract. So he could get out of that contract. There's ways he can get out of that contract, and his lawyers will probably get that done. And then the vast majority of people, hardly anybody even watches CNN anymore. It's on why it's playing in every airport in the world, because that's the only time you'll watch it, because you got nothing else to watch there.
Yeah.
And most people don't even watch it. They put in their headphones and their earplugs and go online and watch something with their phone or their iPad. I'm not going to watch that garbage. It's totally baloney.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, guys, Fox News is doing well, but we need to come up with strategies to grow our viewership even more. Well, based on the major reason why people tune into us is based on the honest and courageous journalism of Tucker Carlson, we could bring on additional people who will do more of the same. Great idea. Or we could fire Tucker Carlson. That seems like the exact worst thing we could do.
I like it.
What? Yes, excellent idea, sir. It sounds like Fox and Tucker Carlson are mutually agreeing to part ways.
Exactly.
Wait, how is that anything but a lie and a bad idea? Well, it's just like back in the day, if the New England Patriots cut their MVP quarterback Tom Brady right after winning the Super Bowl. That seems like it'd be a bad idea as well. Not at all. It's just like if you're gambling at a casino and you're way up, you quit while you're ahead. It's an excellent strategy. Okay, just one question. Tucker brings in 3.5 million nightly viewers, and most of them are objectively Tucker Carlson fans, not Fox News fans. So how will we replace all those viewers? I know, we could continue to pay Tucker Carlson's contract that runs through 2024 to prevent him from broadcasting anywhere else. That would silence him all the way through the 2024 election. Sounds like that would do an excellent job of replacing all of our millions of lost viewers. That doesn't sound like it will replace any viewers. Sir?
I like it. Do it.
Okay, so Obviously, silencing Tucker Carlson will replace millions of viewers, but let's just say it doesn't. Oh, it will, but let's just say it takes a while. Until then, with lost viewers comes lost advertising revenue.
Yeah, we'll lose millions.
Well, not to say the quiet part out loud, but I thought we were money motivated. Well, money is important, but life lesson, sometimes there's more important things than money. Oh, like being principled, pursuing truth, standing on the right side of history? Nah. Then what? Our agenda. What's that? What he meant to say is being a reliable source of information and pursuing true journalism is what we at Fox News stand for.
The globalist agenda is really what matters here.
Dude, true unbiased journalism is what he meant to say for the sake of what we want you to believe. Forgive my skepticism, and with all due respect, Mr. Murdoch. But as a reliable source of conservative perspective, isn't firing the most popular conservative in the country a poor choice? If by that you mean we strive to be the most reliable source of lies people can trust to strengthen the uniparty. What he meant to say is Tucker called a senior Fox News executive the C word. Is that who I think it is? Yeah, she kind of is the C word.
She definitely is.
I've never liked her either. Total. So he isn't going to be fired over that.
You pretty much spoke for all of us on that one.
I'm starting to think that Fox is just meant to be controlled opposition to the leftist agenda.
And if our star proves to be uncontrollable opposition, then you either gotta fire him or give him the old Hillary Clinton body count treatment. Speaking of the C word.
Dude, shut the up.
What? She is?
I know, but shut the up about the other thing.
What I meant to say isn't what I just intended to say.
Fox is a strong conservative outlet fighting the establishment, and we just think getting Tucker out of the way will help us do that even better. You know, go in a different direction. Okay. Bringing in another even stronger conservative voice would be good. Like who? Cletus, who have we got on the list?
Top choices are either Don Lemon, Brian Stelter, Dylan Mulvaney, or a literal puppet.
Bert and Ernie would be great for the job. Huh?
Okay, seems unanimous. We fire Tucker Carlson, sacrifice viewers, lose millions in ad revenue, and replace him with someone that nobody trusts.
And that'll help us get Biden reelected under a believable pretense without any dissenting views.
Speaking of puppets,
then he stays in office and finishes the job.
Yeah, communism doesn't fully install itself.
Fire him.